spent 8 months last year working and living in Beijing for the China Daily. I was the intern and I worked for the features department. I was a features writer, so I had a variety of assignments. I did most of my reporting on expats and expat lifestyle, and for those who don't know, an expat is someone that's foreign and working and living in China. And from my experiences there was a wide variety of just everybody from across the world. When I first got the internship, I knew no Chinese and I knew nothing about the country. And as I'll tell stories, you'll kind of realize that I basically went into a situation I knew nothing about. And I mean, just because I believe that most of you are journalists in this room, being able to face that challenge and do that, I think, is kind of what makes our jobs fun. And being able to make those, it's what makes, it's kind of what gets me into journalism. My first weekend there, I was dropped off out at the airport, and like as soon as I got off the airplane, I was already facing challenges. I was supposed to be picked up by someone from the China Daily, and I had no cell phone, and so I got off, and here I am in an airport where I don't speak the language, and I'm trying to figure out, I'm looking around for, I was expecting someone to have like my name on a sign or something, and it was not that, and so that kind of was, it was kind of foretelling of how my experiences would be. I sat around, I walked around the airport, I tried to find someone that had a cell phone. Eventually some guy was going to give me a ride in an unofficial taxi. I almost got scammed into that, and then eventually he was kind enough to let me use his cell phone, and finally I called a guy that I need to get a hold of, and apparently they were looking for me. So just right off the bat, I was faced with just the problem of communication. And that Monday I went into work. It was my first day of the internship, and I was thinking, in the States, if you have an internship, you almost have to expect to like run and get coffee or something like that. We started the work day a little later, and I don't think everybody's like this, but I didn't have to be into work until 10 o'clock, which I was very, very grateful for. I wasn't sleeping late. And so like I said, I expected to go in there and just, have to get coffee or do something, I don't know. And by noon, I had 5 story assignments, the first of which was due in 2 days, on Wednesday, and this was on a Monday. And I was just, my mind was blown, It's like, I'm in a country, I don't speak the language, I have no clue where to go or even find sources. And I think that was, without a doubt, the biggest problem that reoccurred was finding sources. So one of my coworkers wrote, a Chinese address on a piece of paper for me. I had no clue what it said. After work that day, I got in a taxi and I handed it to the taxi driver, and he brought me to this area. It was, like I said, in the middle of January, so I have my coat on and I'm just walking around the streets, freezing, looking for expats. The story was what expats are doing for the Chinese New Year's, which is celebrated a little bit later than our New Year's. So I walked around, and I was just, anybody that basically wasn't Chinese, I was walking up to and talking and saying, hey, what are you doing for New Year's? And I got back, I got a lot of sources, and I went back and wrote the article, and I turned it in at Tuesday at 11 o'clock. I was very diligent, very ready to get going. And by noon again, I was approached and told, well, this story isn't exactly what we were looking for. This is, up until that point, I'd really only written news, and I wrote it in a very news style, this just in kind of deal. And so they said, why don't you go out and try it again? And so I went out the second night and I tried it again, and I rewrote the article and turned it in the next day. And what I turned in the second time, they were very pleased with. I was supposed to go on the 5th page, and they ended up running it on the 2nd page. So that was very cool. That was probably after that, I felt like I could do anything. Just like when I was going out in the taxi cab, I remember just being like, holy cow, maybe a little dirtier than that. It's like, what am I doing, man? I was like, I have no clue what I was doing, and then, I just told myself, it's like, you can do this, just take it step by step. So that's very cool. Like I said, one of the biggest challenges, I think, of working in the newsroom, of reporting in a foreign country, because, that's what I was doing, was finding sources. As opposed to in the United States, where I'm a big fan of just going around and I'll talk to anybody and I'll ask anybody a question. I couldn't speak the Chinese, so it was very difficult. When I was given a story assignment, it's like, well, who can you talk to? I can't just, get on the phone and talk to anybody that I want. So that became maybe a challenge for me, and something that I really strove to overcome. And I'll give a story about that. So one day I used the internet a lot, and I used like forums and blogs, and I just used that to find anybody that could speak English. And one day I came across a website talking about the Rotary Club in Beijing, and I said, well, this will probably have a lot of good sources in it. So I randomly picked up the phone and I talked to this guy, and I said, hey, I want to do an article on this, this, and this. I know that you have a lot of foreign people there. Can I come and interview you guys? And he invited me to lunch, and I actually sat in on one lunch for the Beijing Rotary Club, which, for those of you who aren't familiar, has like a lot of big wigs, kind of like more, some of the higher ups. And so I sat on there, and I was the youngest one in the room. I was absolutely nervous, man. My shirt was untucked at one point. I just remembered I was freaking out, and I just again just told myself I could do it, and I ended up going there and meeting a lot of really interesting people. And probably one of the best sources I met for that was I ended up doing a story on him. He was the Rwandan ambassador to China, and it was very cool. And I don't know, I think that was one of the things that just kind of, again, opened my eyes to the situation. I really prefer to do this in a question manner, so I'm going to talk a little bit more, but I think that we should open it up to the questions, because I think that you probably both have a lot of questions for both of us. But as an American, like sitting in, as we all know, China is currently communism, which I think should be given a very loose translation. I don't know, it doesn't seem like the stereotype that we have on it. But I was working in a newsroom where the media was censored, but I think it's very interesting to know, because I didn't really know what to expect with this. But when I got there, I found and I discovered slowly over time that it's not as bad as it's not in the same way that you would think. I find that a lot of the censorship happens on the personal level, and I think there's a lot of similar censorships that happen in America. One of the columns I had to do was something called it's called a Your Say, and essentially I would go online and read blogs, and I'd give little excerpts from these blogs. And of course, if you guys have ever been online, which I'm sure all of you have, of course you get people that are just like saying these outrageously negative things. And so, I mean, just to give an example of how I believe the censorship works is like when I was reading these, I knew that if I put this in there, A, it probably wasn't that true, and B, I knew it would probably get booted out anyway. So, just in terms of media censorship, I don't believe that it's as harsh as maybe we're all led to believe. With that, I think that we should maybe open up to questions. Is it okay?